Hey everybody, Jeff King here, coming to you with another initial impressions video for Hoarders from RocketSlug Games. It's a two-player kind of miniature style combat on a small board. Plays in about 20 to 40 minutes depending on which way you play. There are three different ways in the rule book you can play. You can play that the dwarves have to collect all three of the troll's treasures and get them back. You can play that the troll takes these treasure tokens. One of them on the back has a relic symbol, and that the dwarves have to find the relic and get it back. Or you can play that even the troll is not sure where the relic is and puts them out blindly, and then once the relic is discovered, he has to stop the dwarves from getting that back. The dwarves are trying to get the treasure back. They can also attempt to kill the troll, but the big thing is getting the treasure back. You have two different types of dwarves here. You got your lancer, who are carrying these cool little lances. Now, first thing I'll say up real quick up front, this is a homemade prototype. Even the miniatures and stuff were made. It's been traveling quite a bit. So every time they get it back, unfortunately, they've had some issues with shipping. So some of these guys have taken some rough wear and tear, and he tries to fix them and repaint them. He didn't have time to repaint them all before I needed to get a hold of it so I could look at it. So what you're going to end up seeing behind me is a homemade prototype that is very well done and very well represented, but the final product will, of course, be a manufacturing company will be making them. So just keep that in mind. But what I have here is pretty cool. Here's one of the guys that's already kind of painted up and looks really cool. So back to the two types of dwarves. You have your lancers, which are these guys here that are carrying these spears. And these spears actually come out, which is something we'll talk about. It's kind of cool. So they kind of have these spears. So they're the lancers. They have the lances. And they don't move as much. They don't do necessarily as much damage. But they have one really cool ability. Oh, and they're easier to hit. But they have one really cool ability where they can lance the foot of the troll, which, if they're successful, the troll's foot, the lance is stuck in the troll's foot. They lose their lance, so they can't use it again for the rest of the game. But the troll's foot is going to be stuck for a round, at least potentially a round. The troll has an ability to try to break out of it, but if they don't, then that foot is stuck in place for one full round. That's kind of cool. And there are like 5 of those guys. And then there are 2 Dwarven Warriors. And Dwarven Warriors are a little bit tougher, a little harder to hit. They have more action points so they can move a little bit more, and they do more damage when they attack and hit. And there's only 2 of those guys. And basically, once a Lancer loses their lance, they kind of become a Dwarven Warrior. They have the same movement and all that stuff. The only thing, they have the same movement. They're still easy to, they're still a little more squishy, and they don't do as much damage as a regular Dwarven Warrior, but they at least get the movement after that. And then, of course, you got your big old troll. And what we're kind of looking at here, represented, here's your health. So you'll track your health here. And then you have over here where you've been damaged. So as the dwarves hit you, you'll they'll roll a d6 to see where they hit you, and you'll mark that spot. And then here's kind of a little write-up of what happens for each location hit. Thoughts, opinions, initial impressions. I had a lot of fun with this one. This was pretty cool. Now, the one thing, like when I first heard about it and it was presented to me and I knew it was coming, I kind of thought, it'd be kind of cool to have this big, nasty troll miniature. And then when I got it, you actually only get the feet and the hammer that he gets to use. And I was like, oh, I'm not, okay, well, I'm only doing the feet. But then I thought, this is kind of really cool. Like, this troll is so damn huge that all the dwarves can kind of focus in on are these big feet that they're dealing with. And it does some cool things too that you can't, as far as how to use the troll's action points, that you couldn't really do as well with a one miniature, because almost everything you do with a foot costs an action point. So pivoting one foot is kind of an action point. Pivoting the other foot would be another action point. Moving each foot is an action point. And then there's some rules about how close together the feet have to stay, all that kind of stuff. So those are things you have to kind of keep in mind when you're on the troll side. And again, if it was just one miniature, you wouldn't really have that. It would be a little more simplistic, I guess. There'd be less thought process on, am I spending an action point to pivot, go backwards, whatever. So the troll has kind of two ways to attack. He's got his hammer attack, which he can swing out up to 2 spaces away from him. In front, there's a blind spot behind the troll's feet, where he can't use his hammer. Makes sense. And then you can use that attack to try to do some damage. Basically, if you hit a dwarf, you kill a dwarf. They don't have hit points like the troll does. And they got to roll a die to do that. Or the troll can basically step on any of the dwarves. And if they get to and step on the dwarf, that's an auto kill as well. A couple things that the dwarf can't do, the troll can't do. Troll can't step on a treasure, so any of the treasure tokens, wherever they are at on the board, can't be stepped on, including if a dwarf has the treasure. You can't step on the dwarf to stop that treasure. So in that instance, you either have to have some kind of card that you can do something, which I'll get to in a second, or you have to use your hammer to stop that dwarf with the treasure. So there's that. One of the other cool things, there's like a bunch of these cards. The dwarves have their own little deck, and the troll has his own little deck. You basically only get 5 of these in a game, and they're most of them are one-off kind of abilities you use once and lose. So that is actually kind of cool, because you got to decide when you use these cards and when they'll help you out while you're trying to get your objective complete. And there's a bunch of there's the troll heals 1 point every round. There's one in here. There's a card in here that you can play it at the beginning of the round, and you end up healing like 3 instead of 1. So stuff like that. You can the splinter, which I believe is getting played in the game behind me at some point, is when the foot is lanced, so you can't move, and you'd have to make that roll that next turn to see if you break out or not. You play the splinter when the attack happens, and you still take the damage, but the lance breaks, and you don't have to worry about being stuck in place, at least for that lance. And the dwarves have all kinds of things too, a little extra damage, jumping 2 spaces, so basically almost kind of getting 2 extra movement, but for the express purpose of attacking, stuff like that. They have one where if they can kind of damage the troll from behind in their blind spot, they'll lose 2 action points, so 2 less potential movement, or so that there's less things that the troll can do. So kind of like hitting the Achilles heel and slowing down the troll for a turn or 2. So all of that stuff is kind of cool. I do like, it's a 2-player game, like I said, so if you wanted to, you could potentially do something like one guy plays the trolls and you divide up the dwarves if you wanted to get a couple more people around the table. There is the possibility of that. I think it would still play just fine. It'd be one versus many kind of thing, but the way it was designed, it's designed as a 2-player game. I like the cards. I like that you don't get all the cards every time, so you got to kind of figure out how you want to use those. In fact, I like these enough that it'd be cool if there were more. I think there's like 8 of them here, and you get 5 of them. So just A little bit more would be kind of cool so that you're not always seeing some of the same cards. You have the potential not to, but 5 out of 8, you're going to get some repeats. But I like that because you see those cards and you look at them at the beginning of your turn, what 5 you got. And these are things that kind of work into your strategy. So your strategy might change a little bit depending on your cards and stuff. So I like that. Both sides get those. That's kind of cool. You never know what's potentially coming out of your opponent's hand to help or hinder them. Help them hinder you. And yeah, so that's kind of cool. I like the combat is straightforward and simple. Each side is basically going to end up rolling a d6 unless the troll just steps on you. And the Lancers here, you have to roll a 3 or better to hit them. The Dwarven Warriors, you have to roll a 4 or better. The Troll, you have to roll a 4 or better. There are some things like the Troll can stun some guys, and that those usually are like a couple of them I saw was like roll 3 or better, that kind of thing. So it's all based around a single d6. That's pretty straightforward. All of that stuff kind of lends itself very well to making this a quick 2-player kind of strategy game with these cool little miniature guys. Like I said, the dwarves versus the troll. I really dig the the other thing I kind of should point out, this is kind of cool. I said early on, that the Lancer holds the lance, and when I was first reading the rules without looking at this, and it said the Lancer does his thing and loses his lance and becomes a dwarf warrior. I was like, well, how are you going to know that? When I was just reading the rules before I ever saw the game, I got the PDF early. And I'm like, well, how are you going to know that? Are there markers to mark him as a kind of like a warrior now instead of a Lancer? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The lance comes out, and now all the guys without a lance that aren't, carrying the sword are kind of the Dwarven warriors that just aren't as good with the axe. I said sword earlier, axe. But the other cool thing is, how do you know when a foot's lanced? Well, there's a hole there, and there you go. Now you know that foot is lanced and stuck in place. So that's kind of cool. I hope that works out well in the manufacturing process as well. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty kind of simplistic thing, but it just adds to, the theme and the immersion of what you're doing. Hey, I just lanced the troll's foot. He can't move that. Now the troll sees that he's got this big lance through his foot, and he's got to try to break free. All that stuff. All of this stuff works really well. Got to play a little bit more. Sometimes I think the board is too small. It's somewhat too easy to maybe for the dwarves to just focus in on the treasure and get it back. That might change a little bit if you play more of like the relic. You're only looking for the relic because everything the troll does, the troll is slow, which makes sense, but can reach out up to 2 spaces away with the hammer and all that stuff. So I don't know. You play that out, but it is meant to be a quick game, and I think if you see the game behind me, there's like 7 dwarves, and the troll took out 5 of them. No, 4 of them before the treasures got back. So go either way, because if you get a bigger board, you're not helping the troll out at all, because again, the troll is pretty slow. The troll is moving both feet, and all 6 action points work for both feet, where the dwarf, there's 4 action points for the Lancer, but it's just a single move, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, and the Dwarven Warrior is 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, versus the troll going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that kind of thing. So the troll is definitely a lot slower, so a bigger board would not help the troll at all. So I think for what this was going for, it did an excellent job. I like everything. I can't wait to see the final product because this is pretty cool, and I like what, I wish I had the ability to make miniatures. Of course, I also wish I could paint, draw, everything else. I have 0 artistic talent. That's why you just get to stare at me in videos. So I like it. I like the feel of it. I like everything that's provided. The rule book was really well done. This was a good rule book. I understood what I was doing and what I was working on right away. Easy reference points to go point back to if you're looking for things. All solid stuff. There's some pretty decent artwork in here too, on this and on the cards. Nothing really confusing. So that's kind of cool. I also like the fact that there are 3 different ways to play. The only thing I would say is I kind of maybe wish that there was maybe a 4th, because 2 of the 3 are kind of the same. It's just whether or not the troll knows where the relic is or the troll doesn't know where the relic is. There's that. It's minor. Like I said, it does make for a different style of game because, you know, in one, the troll might know where to kind of favor hanging out at. In the other one, the troll's not going to know. And then in the one that you're seeing play behind, which is get all 3 treasures, just got to kind of make a decision on where he's going to try to stomp and stop people. Okay, there you go. This is Hoarders from RocketSlug Games. It is coming to Kickstarter soon, I believe in July. So be on the lookout for it. Once it is launched, I will come back here and make sure we put a link so that you can follow that. But my overall initial impressions are this is a solid, quick, 2-player kind of tactical battle game with some cool little miniatures that I think plays really well. And I'm glad I got a chance to take a look at it. All right. So I will be back very soon with more videos. Thanks, everybody.